Welcome in. This is Hype Factor, a fantasy critic podcast for all the fantasy critic enthusiasts out there that can't get enough talking about fantasy critic. This is episode 5, and today we're going to be looking at Annapurna Interactive, doing a deep dive and looking at their games over the last number of years. But first, I want to welcome in my good friend Marcus. Marcus, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, John. My voice, people may be able to hear, is a little scratchy today. Hopefully, that's not it's able to hold up. We got lots to talk about today. I'm looking forward to getting into it, but yeah, hopefully my voice holds up.
There is a lot. There has been a lot over the
There's a
last
lot.
month or so. And we're going to try and break it all down, at least in terms of its relevance to Fantasy Critic. Anything happening in your leagues that you kind of want to share with the audience before we get going? Any kind of big movement or surprises along the way?
Well, we I guess we kind of talked about it a little bit last episode, but and really the most of the episodes that we've done to this point. But I always like picking games that have early release dates and are going to get me points early. So a lot of that has come to fruition in the leagues that I'm playing in. So I think in 3 of the 4 leagues I'm sitting at top spot, but that's partly
Okay.
because I've got so many games that have released relative to everybody else. But I was thinking, like we talked about it on last episode, that a lot of the games that we had quite high hopes for had maybe underperformed a little bit. But I don't have a game on my roster that's less than an 80 on any
That's
roster in
pretty
any
good.
league. And so even though like the Civ 7s and the Rift of the Necrodancer, I was quite confident those were going to be high 80s, maybe even low 90 games, and they didn't quite do that. None of them are below 80. So I've got rosters filled with games in the low 80s at this point, and the odd. I think I've got Split Fiction, which as we'll talk about, did
Nice.
quite well, and in one league, and I got Xenoblade Chronicles X in one league, and so those extra kind of like bumps from those ones that did perform as we kind of expected they would are doing okay. So I'm sitting good. I feel confident in most of these leagues where I'm sitting, and yeah, things are going to. How are your leagues, your 2 leagues going?
One doing really well, probably because of Split Fiction, and a little bit, I've just been more risk averse in that one. In another, a lot more. Still waiting for those Star of Providence reviews. We're at two. We're at 2 top critic Star of Providence. It's averaging an 85 or something along those lines. Of just truck it along. We got a number of months left for those other kind of 3 reviews to come through. I'm confident we're gonna get there, but that game. Outside of Fantasy Critic is getting a lot of positive buzz. I'm kind of happy for that. Some justification, even if the Fantasy Critic points don't come through, it is getting a lot of notoriety, a lot of positive buzz, and I can't wait to try it myself because it's now on Switch. So yeah, it's been a crazy month. Shout out to the Fantasy Critic Discord. If you haven't visited, it's a worthwhile visit. You can get an inside look at all the chatter, and I've been a little bit more active over there and taking a look at what's going on. So shout out to them. But without further ado, maybe we'll switch it over to talking about our topic this month.
Topic of the month.
We're going to be looking at Annapurna Interactive, and the idea here is once in a while, every so often, we're going to do a deep dive into a different publisher or developer, looking at their games, their track record, what it means when they are having their own showcase, why we should be paying attention, how to evaluate games coming out of those kind of camps, because I think that we talked about in the last episode when we're talking about indies, it can be really important. It can be one of your benchmarks, and so we will dedicate some time going forward, every so often, talking about different groups. In this particular month, we're going to be talking about Annapurna. They did have a showcase, so we'll get into that a little bit. But starting off, Annapurna, many of you will probably already know, they're a video game publisher known for innovative and emotive type indie games, having published notable titles like Stray, Outer Wilds, What Remains of Edith Finch, and much more recently, Wanderstop. I like this definition that pulled off of one kind of description off of Metacritic, and they said if there is such a thing as an art house game publisher, Annapurna probably fits that bill. So I think that's pretty apt. And I think Marcus and I both have chatted. We've talked about Annapurna. I think we're both kind of fans of at least some of the games that they put out over time. And in terms of Fantasy Critic, we made reference to it last week, but we're really going to dive into kind of how to break down games that Annapurna publishes, how to evaluate them, and what we can expect from them. But one thing we wanted to flag before we get in there are the recent changes that Annapurna have gone through. In 2024, I think just in September this past year, they had a mass resignation of their staff. I think there was a desire to spin off into an independent entity. Those talks broke down, and so there was a mass resignation of their staff. And while those employees went on to, I think, form their own company, Annapurna has continued to work through its own operations. And I guess the big caveat to everything we kind of put forward here is they've had a track record, they've had a history, but there's also a big question mark about what's to come. So before we kind of get into that, maybe I'll hand it over to Marcus to do a little bit of a looking back at what Annapurna has done to date.
Sure, thanks, John. So yeah, I've dug deep into the history of Annapurna. Obviously, I think like a lot of people, particularly fans of indies, are going to be quite familiar with the name Annapurna. And I've played a fair amount of Annapurna games, but I was quite, I don't know, surprised at how many games that they've published over the years. So their first game that they published back in 2012 was The Unfinished Swan. And since then, they've published 34 more games to this point, with the most recent one being Wandersup. John had mentioned that one earlier. But, there's some pretty big heavy hitters in the indie scene that kind of fall under that Annapurna published title. And, there's a reason why it has such a positive reputation. There's the What Remains of Edith Finch. Journey was a published game. The Outer Wilds. Florence was one that I remember getting a lot of hype as a mobile game. The Artful Escape, more recently Stray, Neon White, Cocoon, Lorelei, and the Laser Eyes. So like these are pretty heavy hitters, and we wanted to really take a look at the numbers. We're trying to look at things through a fantasy lens here on Hype Factor. So I wanted to take a peek a little bit at the scores that these games are getting and what you can expect, at least what you've been able to expect to this point. With these kind of more recent changes that the organization has undergone notwithstanding. But at least to this point, if you take a look at all the review scores, you average those 35 games that they've published to this point, the mean score on OpenCritic is just a hair under 80, 79.8. So that's pretty decent, right? It's not bad. The highest scoring reviewing game that Annapurna has published is Journey at a 93, but the lowest is a game called Last Stop, which came out in 2021, sitting at a 69. So I was
hold on a second. The lowest scoring game that they've published, sitting at a 69. So just that 1 point.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty amazing as a stat.
It's not bad, right? And so that said, you don't want to. If I'm trying to add games, I don't want 69s or really even low 70s on my team. So what is kind of the likelihood that, or at least maybe the historical precedent, or I don't know, the kind of what things have done in the past. And so what I wanted to do was break down those 35 games that they've published and see where they each kind of fit, kind of in that, what ranges they tend to fit in. So Last Stop, as I mentioned, is the only game that's in below 70. Okay, so the only game that they've ever published that's been below 70, they only had one out of the 35 total. They've had 9 games that have scored between 70 and 74. They had 7 games that scored between 75 and 79. 6 games that scored between 80 and 84. They have had 11 games that have scored between 85 and 89. And they have the 1 game Journey that scored 90 plus. So it's an interesting distribution when you actually kind of look at it, because like just based on this historical precedent, if you pick an Annapurna game, the most likely outcome that you're going to have out of all of these is like an 85 to an 89. But then the second most likely outcome is like a 70 to a 74. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of I was surprised when I saw those results. I was kind of expecting to see more in that 75 to 85 range.
That would be what you would like
Yeah, like a
normally
kind of like
expect
a,
from
a
like
normal like
a
bell
normal
curve sort of
distribution. Yeah,
situation. Yeah.
yeah, that's
So
interesting.
so it feels like they do really well or they do okay. You know,
Yeah,
they're not terrible games by any means. A 70 to 74 is not a terrible game, but it's not a particularly uh, I don't know, it's not really a game you want on your fantasy critic
yeah.
team. So I think
Can't
that
afford
they're
too many of those if you're gonna win, right? Like that's like you know.
yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I think kind of doing this analysis is kind of I think Annapurna might be riskier than I thought. Like when you when you average everything out, they average about an 80, right?
I don't know, Marcus. You just sold me on it. I'm like, okay, let's see what's coming up. 'Cause I'm like, I'm going for those 85s to
Yeah.
89s,
I
but
think it's kind of we talked about it on one of our first episodes, these idea of a boom
yeah,
or bust sort of situation. And I
yeah,
think it's kind of like Annapurna games
yeah.
can be a bit of a boom or bust situation.
I do like what you said last episode when we're talking about indies, like this is a clear example. They you know what your floor is. Now the floor
Right.
is not exactly what you want it to be, but you can feel pretty confident you're not going to lose points.
Right.
I mean, that's not nothing, especially when talking about indie games that you may want to take a swing on.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes the more risky ones, you really don't know where it's going to land, and you're hoping for something in that high 80 range, but at least you kind of know there's a base, you're not there's a bottom
Yeah.
that you're not going to fall out from. And I don't know, like it's a really interesting distribution. We're going to talk a little bit about the more recent showcase that they just put out this month. It kind of gives me a lot to think of when we're talking about those games.
Yeah, because like again, we kind of I'm just looking at these numbers, right? So basically, 18 of the 35 scored an 80 or higher, that they've
Yeah,
ever published. But that means
they're
that
right down. Yeah.
17 out of 35 are less than 80, right? And 10 of 35 are less than 74 or less. So it's like
Yeah.
it's I don't know, it's a little more variable than I was expecting to see. I'll be honest
Hmm.
when I was um decided to put these numbers together. So I don't know. So I guess the key with all of this is how do we pick ones that are
Hmm.
going to be 80 to 85 to 89 range, of which they do a lot of, versus those 70 to 74? Like what are the
Yeah.
characteristics
Yeah,
of those seven?
you can't just leave it on the publisher.
Yeah.
You gotta kind of do some more work
Yeah.
to then filter through kind of what's coming out and make those determinations. Well, hopefully, as we kind of go through the list of games that are upcoming from Annapurna, maybe it'll become a little more obvious just based on what we've seen, what we're hearing, talking a little bit about those games and see how they're how they're doing. Yeah, so why don't we get into it?
Let's do it.
Earlier this month, they actually had a recent showcase. I think it was at the end of February, and it was a pretty big one. I think it's the first one since the staff changes that we referenced earlier. And I think it's going to be the first signal. So I think that, you just mentioned the 35 games. This will be kind of the next crop, the first signal regarding the quality of published games and the legacy kind of after that change. The first one I wanted to kind of flag has an April 30th release date, and it's one of the games over the last little while that I think has gotten some notoriety. It's called Skin Deep. It is one that it's an interesting looking game that is getting. I think they had a demo out through the
Yes.
Steam
Yep.
Next Fest, and so people had a chance to go hands on. And I think overwhelmingly it's been positive. I don't know if it's enough positivity to warrant a pickup, but I do know that generally speaking, and so based on what you just said, positive can mean a lot of different things. It's probably not one where I'm going to take a stab on it, but I definitely think of the crop. To me, it's one that kind of looked the most appealing. I don't know if you had seen this game, or if you had heard anything about it, Marcus.
Yeah, so I've seen it mentioned, probably similar sources, but I haven't. I'll be honest, I haven't looked close. It's first person shooter
Hmm.
gameplay. Is it multiplayer?
I'm not sure.
You
I'm
should.
not sure. The demos that I watched played were not multiplayer, but there was a lot of humor in the
Yes.
game, which seemed to hit. There was a lot of like different types of. I know you said first person shooter, but they call it an immersive first person shooter because I think that the world building and kind of some of the stuff that they're doing in the game is supposed to be kind of the big attractive piece. So um, I don't know. I'm not sure if it's multiplayer. I don't think so.
It
I
doesn't
don't think so.
look like it actually. So,
No.
because the reason I ask is I'm always a little bit more hesitant about multiplayer indie games in particular.
Hmm.
I think they just have a lot. I don't know. There's a lot more a bit of an uphill battle. I think for those games to review well. Again, it's not that they
Hmm.
can't. It's just I would be a little more hesitant. So the fact that it's single player, that makes me a little bit more confident. I think these guys have done something previously. I have it. Yeah, these guys did a game called, I'd heard of it. I don't even know why, because I think it's only a PC game. It's called Quadrilateral Cowboy. I really don't know the gameplay. I remember maybe the name really sticks out. And so I did take a quick peek on OpenCritic, and it reviewed at an 82 previously.
Okay.
So at least the devs have a track record of at least one game that they've done. I think that they have done other games as well, but that was the only one in OpenCritic that had a score. So they at least have done something that has reviewed pretty good. And yeah, the fact that it's coming out soon, it's not probably a game that I'm rushing out to go pick up. But if I'm looking for
Okay.
something, I think you could probably do a lot worse than a skin
Yeah,
deep.
that's
Yeah,
fair.
yeah,
Yeah, April is going to be a stacked month for releases, but we'll get into that little
yep,
bit later.
yep.
The next game up was To a T, with a May 28th release date. Similarly, this is I guess described as a charming adventure game from the creator of Katamari Damacy. And I don't know. This game, when I looked at it, I mean, I don't have an eye for it. It's not my style of game, so I didn't really give it too much attention when I was first watching the Annapurna showcase. But since then, it's kind of taken off in terms of having a bit of momentum in terms of hype, even in terms of Fantasy Critic. I think people are picking it up. So I don't know. Any thoughts here, Marcus, on To a
Not
T?
really. I hadn't heard of it. I didn't catch the Annapurna showcase when it initially previewed, but then I heard Blessing out from Kind of Funny talking about this game and him being quite impressed about it. So, to be honest, I wouldn't even be shocked if that's why it
Mm.
may be getting a decent amount of interest in the fantasy critic community, and why it's getting picked up a little bit. It looks cute.
I don't know his track. I don't know his track record with Fantasy
Well,
Critic. I'll
yeah,
have
I
to go and
mean,
look at
I think
and see
he's
something.
actually, I think he does okay.
Okay.
But he wasn't advocating it for Fantasy Critic. He just liked it
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
to
just
play
liked
it.
it. Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm too old. This is about T posing or something like that. I don't even know
I
what
don't
that
know.
means. Yeah. So,
I
anyways,
don't know. Boom or bust.
yeah,
Boom or bust, people. It could
yeah,
be amazing. And
yeah,
yeah, next one up was Morsels, which looked like a creature collector roguelike. No release date. So for me, while it kind of looked cool, probably not something I'd consider at this point. With indies, and we'll get into this a little bit later as well. Especially at this point of the season, and where my publisher, my team is at. Yeah, I try and avoid like not like indies that don't have a release date.
yeah,
So that kind of moves it to the bottom of the list of what I'm actually considering for pickup. To
yeah.
your point, To a T and Skin Deep both have kind of early release dates that you can trust. So I just it's one of the reasons I put morsels to the back of my list.
Yeah, well, I remember in at least a few of my leagues, Marcel's was being drafted, and it was probably
Mm.
based on the Annapurna
Hmm.
Association, the publishing of it. So yeah, I would agree. I don't think there's if you don't have it now, I think it looks
Yeah.
fine, but I don't think there's a reason to go rush out and pick it up right now.
Yeah, the next one is Wheel World. I think this one has an early 2025, so no date, but they're claiming early 2025. Had a Steam Next Fest demo. This one to me might actually be the one. It's getting a lot of buzz. It might be a worthwhile pickup. I don't have spot for it currently without the date. I don't have spot for it on my team. But any thoughts on Wheel World?
I feel the same actually. Like I'm not rushing out to go get it, but I think maybe of this bunch, maybe in addition to Skin Deep, they're probably
Hmm.
the ones. If I was looking to add a game, that would probably be one of those two. It seemed from the people that I heard on podcasts that I listened to that happened to have played the Wheel World demo, they liked it.
Hmm.
So, and these are the same devs that did the Nidhogg games, which
Mm,
reviewed, I believe, in the low 80s. So they do have a bit of a track record here too. Very different game,
not bad.
apparently, like a nowhere similar gameplay at all. But again, that dev track record is something to keep in mind. So I think it's a decent bet if you're looking to add an indie.
Next up was Far Away, Constellation puzzle game with again just 2025 in the date. No release date yet. Looked really cool. I don't know. I have no way of judging how this game would do. I think it's their debut game. I'm not sure. I would just avoid it at this point. Maybe check it out when it gets released, but not for Fantasy Critic. At least not where I'm sitting.
Yeah, same.
This is next one is an interesting one. Lush Foil Photography Sim with an April 15th release date, a style focused photography simulator. Um, I don't know, Marcus. I'm not touching it, but when I look at this list of games here, I almost look at it like it's going to distribute the same way that your game list just distributed with,
Yep.
and something is going to get into that 85 to 89 range. The problem with this one is uh, it's hard to describe it as a game.
Yeah.
So it's really going to come down to, I think, who is reviewing it. And if this is their style of game, I have never seen anything like this before, but this is also not the genre that I explore often. So it looks beautiful. I think it's different. I'm not going to risk it, but
Yep.
I could see a world in which this ends up being actually very good.
This is almost the epitome of like this could be the 70 to 74 or it could be the
Yeah,
85 to
yeah,
89.
that's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah, I think I agree. I it would be too risky for me. I've heard actually people talking about this game on again podcasts, and again, I think it requires a very particular interest in doing this
Mm.
type of stuff. But I think the people that like it will like it. It's just whether or not it ends up reviewing well. I think that's the bigger question.
And the last game I want to flag from this showcase was Wonderstop, likely the biggest title of the bunch, and obviously it's already released with an 80. So we already know where one of those games is going to land. So, um, yeah, interesting. Wonderstop getting some positive feedback. I think very much an Annapurna game. I've been enjoying watching people play that game. So, yeah.
The only other game
So,
that it wasn't at the showcase, but I think is probably
yeah.
worth mentioning here because it is an Annapurna game. It is slated to release in 2025, and that's Mixtape. Um,
Oh, right.
so Mixtape
Yes.
was
Mm.
the same dev that did Artful Escape, and I don't know that was probably just personally the game, the Annapurna game that I'm most excited to play myself. Probably because I kind of grew up in that time frame that the game takes place. But yeah, it looks good. It's an Annapurna game. I think you could probably do worse, but we don't. We only have this nebulous 2025 release date. So if you are considering adding it, I wouldn't spend very much money on it.
Yeah. Well, that's been our kind of dive into Annapurna. I think there's some big takeaways there. I think I still stand by what you had suggested last episode, which is solid floor. Um, Question for me is going to be, does it hold? So wait for some numbers to come out this year and see if that team at Annapurna are able to continue doing what they've been doing for so many years, hold that floor for Fantasy Critic, and continue to deliver some surprising top end results.
Yeah. I think the lesson that I'm going to take away of having done a little bit more deep dive is that, I think that, and again, this is true for any developer or any publisher, but like just because it's an Annapurna game does not guarantee a good score. It probably guarantees a floor, like as John has mentioned and I talked about previously, but it doesn't guarantee a good score. So I think you have to, I don't know, look at additional factors like the excitement around a game, kind of what people are talking about that game, and if you happen to have previews and stuff like that, don't just go on. Oh, it's an Annapurna game; it's going to score well because 40% of them score 75 or less. So that I wouldn't want too many of those on my roster. So you have to kind of like even if it's something that might even interest you a lot. That might be enough to kind of help push it over the edge, but like it's got to be more than just the Annapurna name alone, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, with that, let's turn it over to the news. There's been a lot happening, and let's see. Let's get a bit of a breakdown here.
Let's get into the news.
And so we have a lot of conferences, a lot of showcases, directs, and
There's a
everything to
lot
get
that
through.
happens in a month, right,
A lot
John?
have happened.
Yeah.
It's insane. I mean, I feel like the year is flying by, but there's also been a ton of games not just released but announced, and we're going to go through some of what's happened over the last number of weeks. We're not going to be able to get through everything, so that's our first caveat. Like, if we don't mention it, probably doesn't have fantasy critic relevance, or at least not fantasy critic relevance to us. But maybe maybe we'll be proven wrong. But we're going to do our best to go through some highlights. The first one we want to talk about was the ID at Xbox Showcase. It's not going to be an exhaustive list, as I mentioned. Maybe one that I'll start with is a Suda 51 game called Hotel Barcelona. I've seen this come up a couple times. It's interesting to be talking about this as a fantasy critic game because usually Suda games you want to avoid. At least that's been the track record. But this one, it is getting some notoriety. I've seen it come up in a couple different threads where people are really excited for it and kind of looking really cool, really different. The only problem is it's still just a 2025. I don't think it has a release date yet, and so for those various reasons, it's still very risky. I'd probably just avoid it. But I did want to mention it because I think it may buck a trend. I don't know if you had a chance to look at this game or see what it's about, but it looks like it could be interesting.
Yeah, I kind of defer to the fact that Suda 51 games don't always review very
I
highly.
feel
So
bad.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did take a glance at it, but I was like, okay, I didn't see anything different in the 10-second clip that I watched. But so I won't be rushing out to but it is something probably to keep an eye on.
We'll play it.
Yeah.
We'll play it. We won't bid on it for Fantasy Critical. We'll play it.
Yeah.
Next one was Liza P. Overture. So this one, still no date, but the reason we wanted to reference it is because it is looking very good.
Yeah.
I think we've talked about it before that the original Liza P, I think, was in the low 80s, and this one is looking like it could exceed that. And it does have that kind of hype from various circles. Maybe there's just an appetite for it at this point, but it looking pretty good. So did want to mention Liza P.
And I think this is a game that's already on somebody's roster in all four of the
That's
leagues that
fair.
I'm playing in. But
That's
if it
fair.
does happen to be available, you could definitely do a lot worse than adding this because I think that I think it has a potential to even outscore Liza P, the main game,
Yeah,
which I think was
I
in the
think
low
I think you're
80s.
right.
Like I think that this
Yeah,
could hit an 85.
yeah.
There seems to be a lot of excitement around. I think the hype around Liza P as an IP has
hmm
only grown and kind of had a kind of nice steady progression. So I think people are going to be excited to play this once it comes out.
The next one probably has a better chance of not being drafted or picked up yet, which is Moonlighter 2. So I actually played the first one. I know this one has a bit of a cult following, I'd suggest. Right now, there's no release date. It's just 2025. But the first Moonlighter did get an 82 on OpenCritic.
Yep.
There seems to be decent buzz around this that it could probably be around or maybe even slightly higher. Although, if you've been following the trend with sequels this year, I'm not sure that that's going to hold, but I did want to flag it because it's probably one of those games that's out there. Again, no release date, so it really is going to come down to what your league customizations are and your personal team. If you need to fill some spots, might not be worth bad one to hold on to. But again, waiting on an actual release date.
I feel like this is going to be another Everhood 2 situation, which we'll probably talk about in a little bit. But like this, where the sequel score is a few points lower than the main game,
Yeah,
and unless I
I don't
see
know. I didn't
anything
like the
different,
game, but
yeah, yeah.
but
I
that's just
played
because
it.
it's not my. Yeah,
I played it and kind of felt the same. I think I put
yeah.
3 or 4 hours into the first game and it just wasn't
Yeah,
my
it
thing.
might be like one of those Lush Foil, like where it really depends who's reviewing it. Like
Could
if it's
be.
their kind of thing, they might really be enamored with it. Next up, Revenge of the Savage Planet does have a release date, May 9th. This one got some attention. I don't know. It didn't do it for me personally, but I don't know if there's any, like, if you had some thoughts on it, Marcus.
Not really. Other than I guess I'm not interested in it, or I won't be bidding on it. The
Yeah.
the previous game, The Journey to the Savage Planet, was at a 76. It's
Yeah,
pretty.
that's why I don't understand why there was getting like, but maybe it's just like people were just excited for the next game. I'm not sure, but yeah, one to avoid. This one I think is worth talking about. Tempopo.
Yes.
Tempopo was at the ID at Xbox Showcase. Hopefully, I'm saying that correctly. It was also part of Steam Next Fest. Yeah, it looks like an interesting little rhythm game, and the same team as Unpacking, coming April 17th. So not too far into the future.
I like this one a lot, actually. I don't have it
Interesting.
on any of my teams. I'm not sure that I will end up adding, but of all the games that we end up talking about today, this would probably be one of the top ones that I would consider adding. I think that,
Hmm.
yeah, it's the devs that did Unpacking, which reviewed okay. I think Unpacking, I don't have it in front of me. I think it was an 82, somewhere around there. So low 80s. But Unpacking was another game, maybe similar to Liza P, in that like the hype around it kind of grew over time, and I
Hmm.
think like people are still talk quite positively about that game. It was a very simple, concept, and just arranging items in a space or apartment or a house or whatever, and but it told a story, and I think like this game is a very different. It almost looks like it's got this rhythm component. It almost looked to me like a Lolo game. Do you remember Lolo, John, for
I never played
NES?
Lolo.
Yeah.
No,
So I don't know. It just kind of like this puzzle rhythm. It's more of a 3D space that these your little character is hopping in and around.
never mind. I did play this game. I just looked it up. I've played Lolo.
You've played Lolo, yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know. I think that
yeah.
this game going to score a 90? Probably not. But I think that the floor is probably solidly in that high 70s. Like I
Yeah.
think it. I have a hard time seeing that, and I think that it's a pretty safe bet that it'll be in the low 80s.
So yeah, Unpacking was an 83. I just
83.
checked. So you're one off
Yep.
83, and I would suggest that if the demo, I don't know this, but if the demo is still up, maybe check it out for yourself.
Yeah.
I've become a big proponent of, play the demo as a way of evaluating it for yourself. That might be something to recommend to people because I do agree with you. It might be a safe floor
Mhm.
to kind of check out and go after. Okay, the next thing we wanted to talk about, I'm switching gears a little bit to a different console, moving into the Nintendo world. Let's talk about Pokemon Presents first, because that did happen earlier in the month. There was a lot of things announced. We're only going to talk about the Fantasy Critic relevant pieces, and that is Pokemon Legends ZA or ZA, which is still just showing as a late 2025 date. Still no firm date for that game. I know a lot. It's drafted in all the leagues that I'm a part of.
Yep.
For Fantasy Critic, I mean, Godspeed to those that drafted it. I don't know where Pokemon is right now.
Yeah.
I was never a Pokemon person, but in terms of Fantasy Critic, like there was mixed reaction for the recent titles. If you look at Arceus, it was at an 83, and this is another Legends game. So, I mean, I guess it's possible that it goes there. From what I understand, they've done some creative things. Like ZA is going to be in a city, which should help with some of the performance issues that they've experienced in kind of the bigger open worlds. So interesting. But Scarlet and Violet, obviously a different title, but more recent entry from Pokemon, scored a 71. So I just don't have a lot of confidence in Game Freak right now. So I don't know. I didn't draft the game. It's gone anyway, probably for most people out there. I would just continue avoiding it, especially without the release. Like I don't know. I don't know if it's worth the headache at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think like I don't know if you drafted it, you're probably excited about it. I do think that, as John has outlined, I think that there is risk with this game. I think that if I had to bet money on it, I would probably think that this will review closer to the Arceus 83 than the Scarlet and Violet. And this game had an extra. It's been a couple of years since
Yeah,
Scarlet and Violet, right?
it
So,
had an extra
and they had
extra
done like
development
a
time.
a pretty high cadence of games. Like this is it's almost like the Assassin's Creed where they took a bit of a break and they're
Hmm.
maybe putting a little bit more into some of that technical hiccups that some of the previous titles have had. So, um, Yeah, I think that there's still risk with this game, but if you drafted it, you're happy to at least get a release window. Although it doesn't give you a lot of leeway in case it does get pushed because it's scheduled for late this year. So
And this ain't no news show, so if you want to know what else was talked about in the Pokemon Presents, you gotta go
yeah,
listen to those Nintendo podcasts. Not gonna get it all here.
yeah.
We're just focused on the Fantasy Critic relevant pieces. But I can't hide my excitement to talk about the next one, which is today, as we're
Mhm.
recording this on the same day, Nintendo Switch 1 Direct. So not the Switch 2 Direct, which is coming up very soon, which will have a massive Fantasy Critic impact. But the Nintendo Switch 1 had a Direct, and we'll go through it. We're going to break it down. We're not going to talk about everything. I think there's some big buckets here. Maybe I'll just start with the big stuff up front, which is no dates for Pokemon, no date for Metroid Prime 4 yet, no date for Dragon Quest 1 and 2 Remastered.
Yeah.
So, like the big ones that probably have already that Fantasy Critic, they're drafted games, they're kind of out there, people have them, still no date. Um,
Yeah, are
yeah,
we getting worried, John? Again, you're more the
I'm a
Nintendo
little
guy
worried.
than yeah. Like I was quite confident that Prime 4 would be coming out pretty early in the year, and the fact that we don't even have a date, and we're almost in April here, I'm a little concerned. I think Nintendo doesn't have an issue like coming up with a date and then releasing the game pretty close to that point.
The
But
only thing with Metroid that I think gives me pause is like it is a Switch 1 game.
yeah,
I mean, that's kind of what they were doing today is they were kind of clearing the decks. And so I expect it still to land within a time frame, or maybe it's a dual. Like I think maybe the date is going to correspond closer with the Switch 2 release because it'll be like you can play it on both.
mm,
That's the only thing I can think
right.
of at this point, and why they're not communicating. I'm much more concerned about Dragon Quest 1 2 Remastered, which I do have on one of my leagues,
Oh,
and
okay.
I don't know why that date wasn't there. So, but it's interesting that like these big titles that were in a direct today just did
Yeah.
not have, whereas most of everything else that was announced, with the exception of a few, did have kind of a summer, spring
Yes.
time frame. So,
Yeah. Or
yeah.
2026.
Yes, yes. In terms
Yeah.
of the 2026 games, so I'll quickly just run through those and then we'll get into the meat of this. Two big heavy hitters for 2026. So if you're starting your watch list now for next year, in addition to Fable, Rhythm Heaven, I think the other entries in the series have had very big scores,
Mm.
one to watch for next year. Tamagotchi Life, I can't remember what the other version, but I think that has enough hype and looks kind of interesting that those are both scheduled or slated for 2026. Maybe start adding them to your watch lists. I know I am, so that's exciting. But let's get into the meat of it. Marcus, you want to kick us off? Was there anything in this direct that you saw that kind of we haven't mentioned yet that would be one that you would be eyeing for potential fantasy critic points?
Well, I got two. I've got two. So I
Okay.
think that the next game, this might be my number one pickup if I were to add a game, and that's the new Somnium Files game. These are games I don't play, but again, it's a little bit like the Atelier series that I had been hyping up for a while. Is these games review well? So the previous game, or the first game scored an 81, and the second one, which I think had a subtitle of Nirvana, had an 86. And we've got July 25th release date for the newest one. It's called, I'm probably going to mispronounce it, No Sleep for Kaname Date from the the Somnium Files. So, anyways, that that's one I think has a very solid shot of going 80 plus and potentially in the mid 80s. So that and it's got a nice early early-ish or soon-ish date, July 25th. So there's that one, and the other one is Witchbrook. This has a release window of 2025, but it is a game from Chucklefish. And I was taking a quick peek at Chucklefish games, every Chucklefish game, and I think there's around 10 or 12 Chucklefish games. I think they publish games in addition to developing, and they all score in the high 70s, low 80s. I've heard, this is not my genre either, so but this has been a game that's been in the works for a while. and it's kind of one that's has maybe a bit of a cult following. People are excited about its release, so I think getting it here at this direct is probably got some people excited, and I think it's probably a decent option. Again, that winter 2025, those dates can always get moved out, but one to keep an eye on at the very least, whether or not you're bidding on it right away.
Yeah, I think for me, I would probably agree these are the two with the most kind of secure value, specifically the Somnium Files game, the No Sleep for Kaname Date. It's the one that caught my eye. I'm going to talk a little bit later of some Steam Next Fest games where I put some money down, so it's one of the reasons I'm not probably jumping out at these. But yeah, I definitely think that I expect at least the Somnium Files to get a bit of traction this weekend when the bids start going through. There's also two other games that I don't know what to do with, but I think they're going to probably have some Fantasy Critic relevance. The first is Marvel Cosmic Invasion. So, Holiday 2025, that dreaded holiday moniker, which is going to come up over and over again throughout today's episode. But it looked really cool. Like at first glance, this is a me game. I want to play it. Dotemu as the developer, I guess similar devs as Shredder's Revenge and some other uh, um, games of that same ilk. And Shredder's Revenge did very well on OpenCritic. I think it was 87,
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken, maybe, or is it
I think so.
86?
Yeah, high 80s.
Yeah, so this looked really good. A lot of hype behind it. The holiday 2025 should be your red flag potentially, but if that date does come, I think this will be one to watch for. The other game, I don't know how this is going to be judged, but Patapon and Patapon 2, from my understanding, these are PSP games. So I went back and looked at how these games scored many, many moons ago. I think Patapon 1 scored an 86 on Metacritic and Patapon 2 scored an 81. So I don't know. Like these are they remasters? I don't know. Are these just ports? So same level of caution. They could be a sneaky pickup, but I'm not going to do that. But they could get reviewed. I mean, the Switch does attract a lot of attention when games get released there. I just don't know how these are being positioned, and honestly, I doubt they're even on the Fantasy Critic pickup list yet. So we'll see if that evolves over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I
They have a
probably yeah
July
that
11th date.
July 11th for Patapon 2, and it's a
Hmm.
package. They're not like it's a
Yeah, they're combined. Yeah,
yeah.
it's one of those collections.
I don't know, man. Those original scores on Metacritic are tempting, but man, I just don't think that. I'm surprised that these games are getting released anywhere at this point. I don't know. Me, I've tried a Patapon game or two over the years, and they just never hit with me. And I feel like this is a Freedom Wars situation. Like, one of those Vita games that was highly spoken about as like a title from a previous PlayStation
Hmm.
handheld, and then they
Hmm.
re-release it, and it just kind of flops, or just kind of comes out with a thud. So that's what I see happening here, but maybe that's my bias. I'm not sure.
There's that. There's also the counter effect, which is people are just so freaking excited that it's back that they just
Yeah,
shower it with love.
yeah.
Um, I don't know. I don't know which one's going to fall. Just avoid it, but I could see it popping up with some points at some point. Yeah, so that was the direct. The next time we record, we will have a lot to say, likely on the Nintendo Switch 2 and the titles that have released. And I'm going to guess by that point in time, all those titles will have been drafted. So we will be very much being doing a retrospective at that point.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
Follow us on Blue Sky if you want to know the latest coming out
yeah.
next week. But we're not done yet. There's still so much more to talk about. So the other thing that happened was we had one of the Steam Next Fest sessions last month, and so there was a ton of games that had demos available. A ton of people talking about what was out there, and actually trying out these titles. So we've picked a bit, like just a handful, things that are being repeated in different circles, things that are getting some notoriety, games where we can probably like judge based on even the developer's past titles with some security. And honestly, some of these are kind of big swings, but I think they're worth talking about. So kicking us off, Promise Mascot Agency. If you haven't seen this game, it is a trip. I don't. It's like a mascot sim game where you drive around an open world and collect mascots, and it's kind of like a Yakuza mini game, but also there's RPG elements. I don't know how to describe it, but it's from the same developers, Paradise Killer. Paradise Killer had an 81 on OpenCritic. This is a game where, in various circles and on Blue Sky, I saw a lot of hype when it was announced that it was coming, that there was a demo. I think it's releasing April 10th, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong
I
about
think
that.
that's right, actually. Yep.
Yeah. And so I downloaded the demo myself to try and see if I could, uh, and it's quite enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked it. It's a wild trip. I didn't know what was happening. It was crazy. The
It's not
characters are
unlike
off the
you haven't
wall.
played Paradise Killer?
Not yet. It's on
Yes.
the list because
Yeah.
of this game, because of this
Yeah.
demo. So I do think this is probably a boomer bust situation,
Mm.
but I think there's a good chance for a boom here. Again, probably dependent on who's reviewing it and if they kind of get it, because it is a wild ride, literally
Yeah.
and figuratively. There's a lot going on. Your co-pilot is like a severed thumb or a severed pinky, and it's just yeah. So if you've seen the buzz around it, it's one of the reasons I kind of think it's worth taking a look at. But buyer beware kind of thing, because it could probably be all over the place. I think Paradise Killer has enough pedigree that I'm willing to give it a shot. So I don't know if you saw this at all, Marcus, or it's
Yeah, a
been on
little
your
bit.
radar.
It's more on my radar. I feel like this game actually has a pretty safe floor.
Hmm.
I'm not too worried about it busting. I don't see a world that this scores like 74 or lower. I feel
Yeah.
like it's pretty safe in the high 70s up to mid 80s. And Paradise Killer was scored an 81, and it was uh, also very out there. And I played it. I liked it as well, and I don't tend to like games that are out there. The story was, little bit hard to follow at times, I found, but um, yeah, it was still fun to play. 100% of it. I wasn't
Yeah.
expecting to do that.
Interesting.
So yeah, I think that it's probably got a pretty safe floor. This would probably be, again, one of those, in addition to that, Somnium Files and what was the other one that I had mentioned that I really, Tem Popo,
Lupo.
the
Hmm.
that those are kind of the three that I would be targeting to pick up. Yeah, I think this is, if Promise Mascot Agency, actually, there's probably a decent chance that it may not be available in your league, but if it does happen to be, I think and you're looking to pick up something and get some points in the near future, this is a decent option for sure.
Cool. Yeah, you made me feel better about that pickup, so let's keep going. Next one up was Skin Deep. We've already talked about it.
Yep.
But it was out there and it did make the rounds during the Steam Next Fest. I had a couple of different folks talking about it. I think it's worth a look. I'll kind of move on to the next one here. Monster Train 2. So this is a game that was not on my radar, but it keeps coming up in different articles about kind of the top demos. Monster Train, the first Monster Train, got an 83 on OpenCritic, and this one seems to be following in the same kind of path, same tracks, if you will. And yeah, if I wasn't all in on Promise Mascot Agency, I think I'd be probably setting my sights on Monster Train 2. I know it's not one of the three that you kind of highlighted, Marcus, that you'd be eyeing, but I don't know. There's something about this game. Maybe I need to do more digging on, or try the demo myself, but it seems to be getting a lot of notoriety.
Yeah, I think that you could, as I said it maybe a few times already, but you could do a lot worse than picking up
Mhm.
Monster Train 2. I think it's probably a fairly safe floor. Maybe the reason that it's not in the top three of mine is I didn't. It's not really my type of game, so maybe there's a bit of bias there. But I think it's probably, for fantasy purposes, has a decent chance to, or a pretty decent chance to score in the low 80s, which is a good score, especially for an indie. So
The next one up is Demon Tides. I saw this reference in a couple different places. I guess it's like a 3D platformer, if I were to describe it, or almost like yeah, there's a platforming element to it. So, but it's been getting a lot of positive buzz. I don't know. This one might be maybe like one of those traps where it's getting a lot of buzz. Hopefully, I'm wrong. Definitely could be wrong, but I think it's the predecessor only scored a 74. Is that Demon Turf? It only scored a
That's
74. Is that
right.
right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So this is probably one where it's getting a lot of buzz, but I'd probably stick to some of the other ones that we've talked and we've spoken about already. The next one up is this seat taken? Um, I don't know what this game is, but I know it's getting a lot of, it's a logic puzzle game where you play matchmaker for groups of hilariously particular people. Okay, I remember hearing about this where you kind of have to like determine where people take their seat on the bus and
That's
kind
right.
of
Yep.
situate them where they want to be situated. And yeah, for such a, I think you're referencing how unpacking has its kind of own unique
Hmm.
loop. This seems like, similarly a puzzle game that has its own kind of character and charm.
I think that this game has like a mid 70s all over it. So I wouldn't be rushing out to pick it up. I think it's going to have its fans. It sounds like the trailer that I watched earlier today. It looks very quirky and funny, but maybe almost a little thank goodness you're here. But yeah, no, I think that you could probably let this pass, or at least I will. Yeah, it's a debut title. The devs don't have a track record, unfortunately, so it's just a little riskier than I think some of the other ones we've highlighted.
And then the last one, which probably outside of the realm of fantasy critic, but it is getting some buzz, is The King is Watching. So it's a roguelite kingdom builder. And I guess you're kind of like deciding between producing resources, training armies, or balancing both while adapting to unique events every run. So almost like a roguelite meets a real-time strategy game in some ways. Maybe that's too simplified description. It looks super interesting. Again, I think it's going to have its audience, probably a boomer bust. Probably not worth the risk if you're looking at Fantasy Critic, but definitely an interesting title that's just come out.
Yeah, I'll let this one pass. Yeah,
Yeah. The last one, which I wish I could bid on, but it does not have a date. And I don't know if it was part of Steam Next Fest or just it was getting, I don't know if there was actually a demo for this, but it's called Absolum. And I wanted to talk about it in this same context of kind of indies getting some love. This is we talked about the new Marvel game that was announced today in the direct. This is another one which is an original IP from the same group that did Streets of Rage 4 and I think also worked on Shredder's Revenge.
yep,
Doesn't have a date, but it's a beat 'em up but roguelike
yes,
version.
yes,
So
yeah,
it's kind of putting a twist on that kind of Streets of Rage model, and it looks great, and the developer has a lot of pedigree, and I'm very interested. Like, it just looks like it's going to be potentially a banger. I just, without the date, I see the movement even in terms of pickups and bids within the Fantasy Critic. I think it got some bids last week. People are putting it onto the roster, but it still doesn't have the date. So I kind of wanted to reference it because I do think that this is a game that will have value. And I guess if you have the ability to just hold and you have space on your team, this might be one to look into. But yeah, I don't know, Marcus, if you've seen this game, I'm really
it looks really cool.
interested.
It
Yeah.
looks really really cool. Yeah, I have seen it as well, picked up in at least one of the leagues that I'm in, and I hadn't heard of it at that point, and I was like, that was what spurred me on to look at it. I was like, oh wow, this does look cool. The pedigree of the devs is good, just as it was for that Marvel beat 'em up game we talked about a moment ago. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I feel like there's probably better bets from some of the games that we've highlighted to this point. But it again, probably a game you could do. There's many that you could do worse than picking up.
Yeah.
How are we pronouncing this?
I'm not sure. Absolum.
Absalom?
That's
Absalom?
Absalom.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, but it looks great.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the breakdown of our showcases and directs that we've had over the last number of weeks. Wanted to also flag some other big news, which is a number of games that have either been announced or where we've gotten dates, so other announcements through the month. Starting off with Firebreak. This is the Control devs multiplayer game, which now has a summer 2025, and they released a new trailer for the game. So at least it's summer 2025. I'm not sure if we knew that before, sooner than I expected, and looking cool. There's some questions with the game, but overall, I kind of trust those Control devs. So that's a big one. I don't know if you had any thoughts on the trailer, Marcus.
Well, I guess maybe I mentioned it earlier. I'm always a little hesitant with multiplayer games, and so and particularly, I guess we could say this is a new IP. I mean, like it takes place in the world of Control, but it's not a game that Remedy has made before. So I don't know.
Hmm,
I'd be okay to let this one go myself, but I could also see it scoring mid 80s. Because
yeah.
these devs Remedy does make good games. So, but I think it feels a little too risky for me personally.
Hmm. Next up is Lost Soul Aside. We had talked about this at the last on the last episode, but it does have a release date of May 30th now, so that's interesting. Another new game, which we did not know about, was announced, which is Terminator 2D No Fate, with a September 5th release date, looking like a pretty cool 2D Terminator game, reminiscent of our childhood. I don't know if it's worth that fantasy critic pickup, but any thoughts, Marcus, on this one?
I am personally very excited. I thought it looked super cool, and I think that this will score like a 76 or something.
Nice.
Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah,
Perfect game to pick up for
yeah,
September, not for Fantasy Critic, for to play.
yeah.
Um, Next game has been getting a lot of buzz. Power Wash Simulator 2. Many people making bids on this game, locking it in for their Fantasy Critic. I'm of the opinion, I'm not sure why. Um, Maybe it has a safe floor, but the first game, from what I can tell, got a 77. I'm not running out to get this game. That could be famous last words because it's probably like a safer pickup because people love this game. The people that play it love it. I expect it probably to exceed the 77. I don't know if it has like a ceiling worth going after. Like I don't think it's going to get to mid 80s. So yeah, despite the safe floor, I'm not sure about this one.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think we're Power Wash Simulator haters, I guess, because I don't quite get it. I do enough
I don't
work
get it. Yeah, at
at,
home.
at
Yeah,
at home. I don't need to sit down and do work. But
same.
yeah, but yeah, it does have its fans. But yeah, I think you can just look at the previous game. If despite its good word of mouth and the people that love it, it still only scored a 77. So I don't think that I wouldn't be spending a big budget to try to
Yeah.
acquire Power Wash Simulator 2.
The other thing is it's already published in 4.6% of leagues and 0% counterpicked. So, yeah, that probably makes sense. Next up, probably some of the biggest news we've had this month, which is Gears of War E-Day. There is I believe it was a rumor that it's releasing around Christmas. Interesting.
Yeah,
I think
well,
this is devastating. I think this is like start prepping your 2026 lists, everyone. Like this sounds Christmas is way too late. Like people are trying to announce winners of Fantasy Critic by that point. So I can't imagine a late December release date for a Gears game. We'll either know in November or early December or it's not coming out this year.
yeah, I think it was a pretty big stretch to think that this was coming out. I think that we were fairly skeptical that we would see this game coming out this year. And I saw this in the notes about Christmas. I thought I had heard that it was all but confirmed for 2026.
Hmm.
And so I did a quick Google search just before we hopped on, and at least the sources that I said basically seem to have confirmed that it's targeting 2026 for E-Day, and that the collection might come out before the end of the year, but not E-Day per se. So I don't know. I mean, it's probably nothing set in stone at this point, but if I had this on my roster and I had the ability to drop it for something that we've already talked about here today, I would seriously consider it, because I think it's just probably taking up a spot. And yeah, you're kind of maybe letting some good points go by, because I think the likelihood that it comes out this year is exceedingly small.
Switching gears to a game not being delayed, Death Stranding 2, with a
Hmm.
June 26th release date, sooner than I had anticipated. I am expecting most people do not have this available in their leagues, but still good for those that have it. That's great. Um, and then I don't know if you want to add to that, Marcus. I don't know what else there is to say. It's drafted.
Yeah, it's drafted. You're probably happy to get a date. It's, even if it gets pushed a little bit, you'll probably still hit this year. So yeah, you're happy that you got your date.
And then Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2. I just saw this the other day with an October, not surprising, October 2025 release date. Not really been on the radar for me, but something just to make note of. Then we move into the rumors. So from confirmed things to just fun things. I don't know if you want to kick us off with this God of War story, Marcus.
Sure. So I guess, there had been some rumors for a little while that there was going to be a remastered, remade sort of God of War collection from the original PS2, potentially the PS3 games. And insider Jeff Grubb had, done some digging, and he, I don't know, contacted some of his sources apparently, and found out, or at least he was told, that God of War collection, while it may be in the works, it's not coming out this year, but there is a God of War side story that's going to take place
Hmm.
in the, ancient Greece, kind of in that Greek pantheon, that is scheduled to come out this year, and it will likely be revealed at a state of play later this year. So I don't know. I think this is Sony doesn't have a ton on the slate this year. I think that this God of War side story would be kind of in the vein of the Miles Morales or Lost Legacy, Uncharted kind of length of game. So it's not a full kind of God of War experience, but it is available to be picked up now. It's been added to the Fantasy Critic website. I think it's like unannounced God of War Greek story or something along those lines. I think this, God of War games review, especially the last two, Ragnarok and the 2018, and frankly, most of the God of War games are high 80s, potentially low 90s. If this game comes out this year, I don't see why it would be any different. And I keep saying it, you could do an awful lot worse than adding kind of a speculative God of War that's being promised to come this year. Um, I think that this is the type of game that I would put a bid in, and it kind of be my lottery ticket. It's a bit like
Mhm.
the Astrobot, unannounced Astrobot game from last year, and hope for the best. So I don't know what you think about
Yeah.
all that, John, but that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Um, hmm. It's an interesting one. On so first off, I think it really has to come down to what your league setup is. For me, I couldn't ever make that move for the league where I have limited drops because I just can't afford it. Now the plus side is you can get it really cheap because I don't think anybody's competing with you for it. But I can't make that move right now. It does incentivize me though for that league to not fill my roster as quickly. Like I think I would recommend that anyway, but partially because of the Nintendo Direct, partially because there are these types of things swirling where we don't know what's coming. And I've been purposefully in that league protecting my budget so that I know others are probably not going to make that move unless they really feel like they have to take that swing. And I'll be ready to pounce like I did with Astrobot if I have to, if we get to the point where it's coming out. In the other leagues, like you said, if you can, like holding on to it's not that that bad. Now, I've got this one league where it's unlimited drops, and I'm holding on to Fire Emblem, like a new Fire Emblem title. So I'm gonna wait to see what happens next week. That is my pitch, right? Like you kind of have to hedge a little bit. Like I think Fire Emblem right now is like the more likely of the two,
Hmm.
but I'll know within a week's time whether or not that's
Right.
true or not. And then I could probably just free up that spot to do something wild elsewhere. And that's probably how I'm going to approach it on both those fronts. Because I will say, I think I was watching some discourse on Jeff Grubb. I actually am a fan of his. And I think on Fantasy Critic, he's probably like somewhat reliable. Like I think
Yeah.
like some of his predictions tend to come true. I mean, there's a couple big misses, but like whatever. Everybody's got that. Like he's no Nate the Hate, but you know.
Right.
Uh, so I'm willing to ride that wave, but I think it's just you got to do it in a way that you're protecting yourself. Like you're not just going all in on it. So I appreciate that. I appreciate that breakdown, Marcus, because I'll be watching for that now in the next couple of weeks. Next up, another rumor, Oblivion remake. So we had this rumor kind of swirling earlier in the year. It's kind of made a comeback, but this time it was circulating with like a really early release date, like as though it was going to be almost shadow dropped in April or May of this year. Um, seems to be a lot of smoke around this. I was looking at the numbers. It's already 37% published, so it's a good chance it's already taken in a number of leagues. 70% counterpicked. That's probably, we were talking earlier, probably a reflection of what was happening earlier in the year with the rumor mill. But this last weekend, it was the second overall waiver wire pickup in Fantasy Critic website. So
Wow.
clearly picking back up again. Again, maybe similar to God of War, but I think you have a higher upside with God of War. It's just the smoke is around. Something's coming. I don't know what we have in the next couple months, but Summer Games Fest maybe. But there's definitely something on the horizon with regards to the Oblivion remake.
Well, and I don't recall if we spoke about this on the last episode, but the original game scored a 94.
Sorry, the original Oblivion game scored a 94.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So that's probably why. But again, it's quite a while ago,
It's
right? Like I
old.
guess the
I think it's
question is, does it hold
2006.
up?
Yeah. It was the same. What were we talking
Hmm.
about? Metal Gear Solid. About like maybe it
Hmm.
was some of these older games that get brought to present times. Like how much are they remaking? Because if they're not remaking
Yeah.
enough, like modern sensibilities may not jive with what those previous review scores were. So I don't know. I feel like I'm okay letting this one go in any of the leagues that I'm in, and knowing that it could be a really high scoring game that I just
Yeah.
get pass on. I just feel like
Yeah.
this one has like a really big variance for me. I feel like I could see anywhere from mid 70s
Yeah.
to high
I almost like this is
80s.
going to sound crazy, but at this point in the season where we're not yet at the halfway point, but there's a lot of you could probably start seeing scores taking shape for different teams, and you may be knowing where you stand in that pantheon of like the top echelon of competitors. And with a game like this, if you're on the if you're trailing, you might be more prone to take a swing. Whereas if you're in a leadership spot, if you're in the lead or you're competing for the lead, I'm always, in that sense, always looking at what my main competitors are doing and
Yep.
how they're positioned. So if you think they're going to go for it, that might trigger you to like, I don't know, try and counteract or counterbalance that. I think that's where you're looking is more about who's likely to start exploring options like that, because then I start getting a little nervous. You don't want someone that you're in direct competition with to just end up with a good pull and just pull away. So anyway, lots to think about there. Those two are good rumor considerations. Next up, Silent Hill F. So this is a bit of a combo. We did see a trailer for this game. Lots of good buzz around this game. At the time, there was no release date, but the chatter, I think, was that people liked what they were seeing. Not a big Silent Hill fan. Generally, there's a lot of positives about the trailer, but still probably wouldn't recommend it as a pickup. Um, but there was a rumor, it was a Finnish website, gaming website, that kind of like threw out there in one of their articles that there was suggesting a July release date. Unclear if that's a typo or a leak. No one knows, but hey, that might be relevant for someone's fantasy critic. The other rumor regarding release date that we got was that potentially September 25th is the Trails in the Sky first chapter release date. I can't remember if that's been confirmed, but initially it was a rumor that was swirling, and obviously that's going to have some significant fantasy critic implications. And then the last one that we wanted to talk about was the Gears of War collection. So lots of recent chatter, especially with the idea of Xbox games going over to PlayStation, about the possibility of a Gears of War collection that could come out in the near future and then be ported and kind of setting everybody up for that kind of release of multiple Gears titles onto other platforms. If that comes true, I guess there's a chance, an outside chance that if it's a remaster collection or something like that, could get some scores, and if they do get scores, they're obviously going to be high. On the Fantasy Critic website, it's not eligible yet. I think it's probably just at this point too much of a rumor. I think collections are always tricky, especially in terms of how to like break them down or categorize them for selection. But something to maybe to keep an eye on if that continues to grow, or if there's more, especially if Gears of War E-Day is being pushed out, there might be a desire to do something this year. Um, so yeah, I'm just keeping my eyes peeled on that. Any thoughts on those ones?
Well, yeah, the Gears of War collection I think is a good one to keep an eye on. I don't know. I don't know that I would. I mean, we can't anymore at the moment, anyways. But like,
Mhm.
even once it gets added to Fantasy Critic, I'm not sure I would look to add it to my roster until it's been confirmed and it
Yeah,
probably has a release date. Like everything has just been rumors with this thing for a while now, and I don't doubt that there's something behind it. It's just I don't know. I would like a little bit more confirmation before I'd consider adding it.
perfect. Well, that's the news. We're going to timestamp all that's for you because that was a long ass section of information
There's a
of
lot to
stuff that's
talk
been
about.
happening.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's keep it going and let's look back at what's been going on over the last month.
Hype check.
Okay. So time for our regular hype check and starting off looking at game scores from the games that were released in March of this year. Starting off with 2 Point Museum coming in at an 84. I think this is very close to where we were kind of positioning this game, Marcus, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, I mean,
So
these 2 point games, they are, if nothing, if not consistent. So it's kind of that 83, 84 amount, and that's exactly what it did.
glad to see it because I had it on one of my teams, so I'll take
Same.
it.
Yep.
Everhood 2. So we had talked about this one. Came in at 78, slightly lower than the original.
It did. Yeah. I think after kind of the disappointing February that we had, I think I had said it was going to be around, I want to say 79. So I was actually fairly close, but I think I was higher on it until we started seeing those February those
Mm,
February review scores being a little lower than we expected, and so it kind of scared me a bit. But probably still a decent game. But I'm not hearing a lot of people talking about this one.
no,
No.
no, surprising. Next up, Split Fiction. So our first game cracking the 90s. It's currently sitting at a 90 in Open Critic. If anything, the praise for this game tells me it maybe should be even a little bit higher. Um, and yeah, it did what I was even skeptical, which was of them being able to repeat and do it again. But it sounds like they've not only done it again, but maybe even excelled and uh, uh, moved beyond kind of what they had done with It Takes Two. So
Yeah, I
can't
mean, I
wait to
think
play
this
it.
just really solidifies, like, it's Hazelight, right? Hazelight
Yeah,
Studios, as just an upper echelon dev. They make
yeah,
games that review really, really well.
yeah. I had this in one of my leagues. I almost wasn't expecting it to be such a league breaker. Um, Outside of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, it really is the thing that's setting people apart right now. So very exciting. We also had Wanderstop coming in at an 80. We already referenced that one. Probably is a little bit lower than people thought, but not bad. Again, kind of everybody kind of coming in that low 80 number. So the trend continues for the year.
Yep.
Um, and then Assassin's Creed Shadows at 82. So this is one, if you've been listening to us for the last number of months, you know that both Marcus and I have been kind of low on this game between all the delays and the controversy and the Ubisoft hate. So this is one where I'm really happy to be proven wrong. Like I think, probably a year ago, 2 years ago, maybe we would have expected it to land around this number, like the Valhalla numbers, etc. But this is kind of good news for those that still trusted in the game. I don't know, Marcus, any thoughts on Assassin's Creed Shadows?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it performed about as good as it could have. And yeah, I'm happy for it. I think, like, it would have been a real bummer, I think, for Assassin's Creed to just be in that mid 70s range. So people
Hmm.
are, everybody that I hear talking about this game seems to really enjoy it. And yeah, good for you, Ubisoft. And yeah, I'm happy for them. I was still felt like it's one of those games, like, we talked about it, ad nauseum already, but it just wasn't a risk I was willing to take, and I would prefer to
Yep.
avoid it and let somebody else deal with it. But I'm happy that it kind of did what it did, because you know it sounds like it's a pretty cool game.
Yeah, and I do think like the Ubisoft ceiling is something to be worried about, though. If the running joke amongst our circles, like if you look at the reviews, or if you start like breaking into some of the review scores, it's like this is the best Assassin's
Yeah,
Creed game ever made. 80.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's one of those things where, and I don't care, like there's been a lot of controversy. You see people that have given it good scores are getting like blasted on the internet. I feel for those people, because it's like, people need to relax,
yeah,
with criticizing other people's opinions. But you also see like uh kind of the inverse, where the game is being lauded as this amazing game and still not kind of cracking that mid 80s number.
yeah.
So I don't know, I haven't played it myself, so it's kind of unfair to kind of give it that judgment, but I just been watching with interest as those reviews have been kind of coming through. So
I do wonder.
hopefully everybody's enjoying it.
Yeah, I do wonder how much these two delays have really, like, in an
Hmm.
alternate world where it released in October. I think it was its first release date. Like, what would the scores have been in an alternate world had it released in February? What would those review scores had been?
Yeah,
I wonder how much these delays really helped allow them to
yeah.
polish it and kind of iron out all any kinks that may have contributed to a lower score.
And then we had Expelled, also coming in at 84. Really
Hmm.
good score. I think probably, I don't know if this is where you had it. I think I had it maybe a little lower, just because I wasn't as familiar with the title. Very good.
Yeah, I think this might have been exactly where I had it. We'll have to go back and check the tape. But
Yeah, I am
um,
taking detailed notes, so we'll go back and do a mid-season check.
yeah, no, I have had an opportunity to play the Expelled already. It was something that I was looking forward to, a smaller title. And yeah, it's very good. 84 is well deserved, and happy for the folks over at Inkle Studios, because they've got another really good game here.
Xenoblade Chronicles X, the definitive edition, coming in at 88. I feel sad that I doubted their ability to do it again, because this is way higher than I thought it was going to land. Having played the game, I get it. I get it. I'm enjoying it thoroughly. I can see why people are so high on this game, despite it being so different than other Xenoblade games. And yeah, if you drafted this and drafted it, late, you're laughing right now. That's a great score for a Xenoblade Chronicles X.
I feel like my ignorance of Nintendo kind of paid off here and just went through. I didn't know any different, that this was kind of the black sheep of the Xenoblade franchise, or supposedly. And yeah, because I think maybe a little higher on it than you, but probably because I was ignorant of how
I
controversial it
just
was
didn't think. I
originally.
thought,
Yeah,
end of a console generation and another port. I'm like,
yeah,
I didn't think the original one, I think, scored an 84 or 85, so I wasn't like super high on it, and
yeah.
happy to be proven wrong and enjoying the game. Then we had Atelier Yumiya coming in at 80, that good old 80.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
1 or 2 points less than I was expecting. I think it was sitting for a
Okay.
couple of days in the 78, 79 range, and then it kind of bumped up. But
Bounce back up. Yep.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, they are consistent.
And the last one on our list here, the first Berserker Kazan, coming in at an 80, also slightly higher than I would have plugged it. I thought it maybe a high 70s for this game. Good for them. It looked cool, and it sounded like a cool gameplay, and they've been able to turn that into a really good kind of score outcome. So
Yeah. Yeah, higher than I thought it was going to do as well. I think I may have said mid 70s. So good for these guys. And yeah, probably not a game I'm going to be playing, but you know, that's okay.
So before we move on to the kind of next section of the show, we did want to like do a bit of a recap on uh, upcoming waiver wire pickups, things that we're recommending. I think we've talked about them all already in one way or another, but maybe we'll just do a quick summary here to make sure that those looking for waiver wire options kind of have like a quick list to reference. So for me, the first one I'm going to reference is Promise Mascot Agency. I think there is a big swing here. It's currently published in 10% of leagues, counter-picked in 10%, so it's a even split. So I'm definitely high on this one. Hopefully it comes through. The next one I'll reference is Monster Train 2. I think this is probably a little bit more stable of a pick if you're looking for something a little safer. It's currently published in 6.5% of leagues and counterpicked in 2%. Marcus, is there one that you want to highlight?
Well, yeah, I mean, we've said them already before, but like the God of War side story, the Greek side story, I think is one that I probably will be taking a shot on. I feel like I'm going to be putting a bit in on that this week in at least a league or two, and then I could say the AI Somnium files and Tempopo I really like as well. In addition to Promise Mascot Agency, those would be
Yeah.
the four big ones for me.
And Popo is only published currently in 0.6% of leagues and counterpicked in zero with an April 17th release date. So the timeline is kind of the horizon's shrinking, and there's not a lot of people picking it up. So it's probably available if you are looking for an option. And then Absalom, no date.
Yeah.
So can't recommend it too highly, but a 6.7% publish and a 0.6% counterpick. I still think that's a safe place to go once
It
that
does
date
look
comes
so
through.
cool. And I think I like the
Yeah.
idea. We what did we talk about? What was the phrase that we had come up with? Like the uniqueness kind of
Yeah, innovation, like
innovation
the
is
idea of
rewarded or
yeah,
yeah. And I feel like this, beat 'em ups have been around, for decades and decades, but having this roguelike element into the beat 'em up and the art style of this looks really, really cool.
yeah,
So yeah, I like the look of this game, and I think
yeah.
I'm hoping I'm rooting for it. How about that?
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
All right. And with that, let's do some pixel prognostications.
Pixel Prognostications.
Okay, so first up, April 8th, coming up in the month ahead, April 8th, south of midnight. I have not prepared for this segment. I don't know what I'm giving these games, Marcus, but so
Yeah.
you can go first.
Okay. Well, I feel like I may have said it last episode. I feel like South of Midnight is trending and has been trending for a while to be a really like a low 80s game. So
Mhm.
I'm going to say South of Midnight. I feel like games have been maybe a little lower than we've expected so far this year. I'm going to go 81. And this is
81.
one of my most anticipated games of the year. I'm very excited for this. So, an 81 is not I don't know. I'm not dissing the game by saying that I'm quite excited for it, but I feel like this might review around 81.
I'm going to give it slightly higher. We didn't talk about it, but there were a number of previews, people that have
Yep.
seen the game or went hands on, and um, I think there are some limitations on the game, but story, look, traversal, all is getting a lot of praise. So I'm going to go 84
Okay.
because
Fingers
I'm with you. I
crossed. I
think there'll be
hope.
some things that hold it
Yeah.
back, but yeah. Next up is Promise Mascot Agency with an April 10th release date. April 10th, circle it on your calendars. There's lots of things coming out that
Yeah.
day. Um, hmm. What do I want it to be? Let's start there. What did I think I'm dealing with here? I'm gonna say 85. I
Okay.
know that's high,
Yep.
but it's when I picked up this game in the leagues that I'm in, that's what I had hoped for and envisioned. I realize that the floor is probably lower than that, and it could be pretty controversial. And it's a high jump from 81 Paradise Killer, but um, I'm gonna try and manifest this a
Yeah.
little bit.
I
I'm gonna
I
go with
don't think it's
85.
I don't think it's crazy. I'm not going to go quite that high. I'll say 83 though. I think that this
Okay.
game has a pretty decent chance to outdo Paradise Killer.
Okay. You're probably being more realistic than I am there. Okay, next up is Blueprints, also with an April 10th. I don't know if this is going to affect review scores. We got a lot of stuff coming out on April 10th.
Yeah.
Blueprints, April 10th. Marcus, go. We've been very high on this
I
game.
am so high on Blueprints. There's nothing that has dissuaded me. I I think that
Go
this
for it.
game is going to score an 88.
Okay. I was going to say 89, and I
Oh,
don't
okay.
really want to land there. There's a lot of discourse about the upper not just the indie tax, but like the kind of the ceiling, the unfair ceiling that indies get. A lot of
Right.
89s, Animal Well, and others kind of just
Yeah.
kind of being hammered there. But I'm gonna say that there has been so much hype for this game in terms of those Jason Schreier and others coming out and claiming before it's even released that it's the game of the year. I don't know if that's just, high praise, excessive high praise or what, but I'm going to say 90. I say it's going to break that ceiling. So,
Yeah. I'm not going to play this. I don't think I'm going to play it anyways.
oh,
This
I'll
game
play it
is
eventually. But
yeah, I don't know. These games are not for me, but I just
yeah.
in terms of fantasy, I think that this is this might be kind of the Balatro of the indie world this year.
All right. Next up is Lunar Remastered Collection. I failed to look up what I think it was low 80s when the original came out. And this is like that RPG remaster, you know, uh, low 80 floor. I'm going to say 81. I'm not familiar enough with the series, but I know people have drafted it because of like the opportunity. So I'm going to say
I
81.
I feel like these games are I don't know. There's just a rabid fan base around them. There's the people who love those classic RPGs, love them. I was a little surprised when we had looked back. I think you're right that they were high 70s, low 80s
Hmm.
reviewing, but they're quite old, right? So I don't know how. I don't know
Also
how many
beloved.
reviews, but they are
Yeah.
very beloved. I feel like this is probably more like a 77.
And the last one on our list, Clair Obscure Expedition, April 24th. What say you?
Yes, so it's my turn. I'm quite excited for this game, to be honest. It seems like the previews that have been done, even people who are not like turn-based RPG fans are speaking quite highly of it. I feel like let's go 84. That was what you were gonna say?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
was gonna say 83. Um,
we'll go 83.
so
There's
like
nothing
it's
wrong.
almost like you're setting the line, and I'm trying to
Yeah,
decide if I'm gonna go over or
yeah,
under the line
yeah.
that you just set, which is funny. Um, hmm, I'm gonna go over. I'm gonna go 87.
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't think
and
that's
we'll
outside
see.
of the realm of possibility. An 87 for this game. I haven't seen a
I don't think so
negative word
either. I think
said
like I could
about it.
see either happening. Like I could
Yeah,
see it going low 80 or high 80, and
yeah.
that's the range in my mind. So yeah. So that's been Pixel Prognostications. We'll see how we do. Before we close it out, we did ask the community for any questions they may have, and we did get one, a really interesting one. John from Gaming in the Wild on Blue Sky asked, after bagging unannounced Astrobot game last year and winning his league, this year he drafted the equally risky, unannounced Donkey Kong platform game. So his question to the panel is: this indeed the year of Kong? And I think this is perfectly timed because the one thing that we have not talked, we talked about the Nintendo Switch 1 Direct. We have not talked about the fact that next week we're getting a Nintendo Switch 2 Direct, and the possibilities around software are kind of endless or unpredictable at this point. So, Marcus, any thoughts? I know you're going to defer to me here,
Yeah.
but any thoughts that you wanted to start with before I kind of went on my little
Well, so
rant?
yeah. So first off, shout out to John from Gaming in the Wild. A great podcast. Indie lover John, fellow another John who's a fellow
Another John.
fellow
Not
indie
32,
lover.
but another
Yes.
John. Yes,
Yeah,
perfect.
and yeah, great podcast. Go check it out if you have the chance. Um I feel like I was doing a little quick Goog because again, I'm not the Nintendo guy on this show, but it's been a while since we've had a main line Donkey Kong game. And like, was it the Wii? There wasn't even one on Switch, was there?
Not an original one.
Right.
They're
They
all
re
remakes or ports
because
or
Tropical Freeze
remasters or
is
ports.
kind of
Yeah.
the last big one, and that came out on Wii U first, right?
Yes, it was ported over.
Yeah. And I did see, and I see you got it written down in the notes here that like there's this new art Donkey Kong art style as well that
Hmm.
is I guess kind of thought of for the Mario Kart, which is all but assured, I guess, at this point. Um,
Hmm.
but would they be doing that redesign for another, mainline game that could be coming up? I think there are worse bets than a Donkey Kong. I know that you're kind of keen on the unannounced Fire Emblem as a potential option, but um, I don't know, man. I don't think you're. I don't, John. I don't think you're crazy. I
Yeah.
think that this
No,
could be Year of Kong. Yeah.
yeah, we got a question about like where to put um for Switch 2 if you have unlimited drops and stuff, taking swings. Like, is it going to be Animal Crossing? Is it going to be something else? Obviously, mainline Mario Kart are all gone. Fire Emblem was based on the rumors for the last 2 years that there was a new Fire Emblem game. But having said all that, I agree that I think if you do have, so long as it's not counterpicked and you have the ability to make that move or have that, I think it's a very strategic pick because there's a number of things going on around Donkey Kong that make it viable. So, first off, again, thank you to John for that question. Like, you're calling me the Nintendo guy. Like, the idea of like getting a Nintendo specific question for this podcast is like mind blowing to me. It's very, very humbling, especially with the direct today. I'm like, I don't know. I don't claim to be an expert, but I do follow it, I guess, enough or listen to other people talk about it enough that something sticks. So yeah, we got so many things pointing to the fact that I think John might be in a good position here. Um, we got the ports that you mentioned that are kind of coming fast and furious. We've got the NSO releases. We had the recent Donkey Kong 94 release that's gotten a lot of hype. The Mario Kart art style, which is reflective more of the movie art style, which is great. Um, you also have the theme parks opening like now. Like Japan just opened Donkey Kong World in Universal Studios. The other one's coming to Florida. I think what month are we in? I think it's like May. Like it's soon. I think it's happening. It's imminent. So um all those things point to the fact that, and your point, Marcus, we haven't had a new Donkey Kong game come out. So um I think it's very, very possible that Donkey Kong is a platformer we get for the Switch 2 launch and not Mario. I know there's a lot of people that have Mario 3D mainline 3D platformer in their thing, and it would make tons of sense to do that as your launch game. But if they're coming out with Mario Kart and we have Metro Prime 4 and a number of other games, like they could theoretically hold Mario to kind of boost sales at a different point in the subsequent year and just have like other supporting games to kind of rally around the Mario Kart title. If you saw, there were some rumors this week swirling that there's a kind of a timeline with the first party Nintendo games coming out with the launch of this system, and then third party support expected around holiday of this year,
Hmm.
presumably with dev kits going out at a certain point. So I think they're going to need supporting titles around kind of some of the big heavy hitters, and I think it might be time. I think that this all might be pointing to like doing something Donkey Kong related. um so yeah,
I just
I
think
think
like,
you might be in a good spot.
yeah, there's just a lot worse bets
Yeah.
than a Donkey Kong, a mainline Donkey Kong game. And I feel like, yeah, like if that's what we're kind of talking about, it sounds like he drafted unannounced Donkey Kong. That
That's
seems,
a what.
that's probably a little riskier than I always want to draft games that I'm a little bit more, have more confidence in, but this could be one of those bets that really pays off because,
Hmm.
if it comes out, it's reviewing exceptionally well. Like
Yeah,
there,
your floor is like mid to high 80s
yes,
probably, right? So
yeah, yeah, 100%.
I just remember when that Switch 2 little teaser trailer came out and it was Mario Kart as the game they showed, and that kind of assured that it's. I was like, ooh, I don't know, something internally inside of me made me think that, because if you remember the draft, there was like those two camps, like 3-day mainline Mario game, Mario Kart. The Mario Kart was like the smaller, probably more risky pick at the time. And when that saw that Mario Kart game come out, I was like, oh, don't think they're going to do both at the same time. Um, so, but that opens a door, that opens a path for Donkey Kong to kind of come right through. So, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll
And for
see.
all the
Can't wait
other
for next week.
listeners out there, like I think that there's a still a decent chance, although maybe that window is closing. Maybe by the time you hear this, you may not be able to
Yeah,
add it. But like that there's a possibility it's still available in your league.
yeah. I
At
think
the
by
time of
Tuesday we'll
recording.
know.
Yeah, at the time of
Yeah,
recording, yeah.
yeah. As of whatever, no, not Tuesday, Wednesday, April 2nd, we'll know
Yeah.
whether or not whether or not anything is making any sense, if we're even close to being accurate in any of these predictions. But Nintendo's going to Nintendo, and we're going to find out.
Yes.
So that will do it for us. That was Hype Factor episode 5. It was a long one. There was a lot of news. We talked about Annapurna. That was a while ago. Look out for the if you're still with us at the end of this, we really appreciate it. And if you're liking what you hear from Marcus and I, please consider giving us a positive 5-star review on your podcast player of choice. It is always much appreciated, including to all those that have already done so. Thank you so much. Marcus, if the people want to ask you a question or get in touch with you, where can they find you?
Probably the easiest these days is on Blue Sky, so I can be found at Marcus O'Neill 79 on Blue Sky. And as John has pointed out, I also do another podcast called Tiny Game Chronicles, where me and my good friend Michael talk about a particular short game, usually games that take us about 5 hours or less to complete. Do a deep dive on those games, and we release episodes every other week. So if that sounds interesting, it'd be great if you want to check that out too.
Awesome. And as for me, you can find me on Blue Sky at John32. And we also have Hype Factor, where we post usually about different interesting Fantasy Critic related announcements and other things. And you can ask us a question there. So it's at Hype Factor on Blue Sky. And we're also still on X if you're listening to us or want to get a hold of us there. And if you want to send us questions and comments, we're happy to incorporate them into the show. So send them over to us, and we'll bring them into our episodes as appropriate. So that's going to do it for us. Until next time, get hyped about the Switch 2.
Remember, the information provided is for entertainment purposes only. Hype Factor does not guarantee the accuracy, completeness, or reliability of any advice or predictions offered. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that you are solely responsible for any decisions you make based on the information provided. We strongly encourage you to fantasy critic responsibly. And remember, this is just a game, and in no way impacts your status as a gamer. Hype Factor cannot be held responsible for any damages resulting from bad picks, drops, or overall Fs on your season.